The COVID-19 pandemic has led to many people working from home. This means offices are empty. And with some businesses struggling to pay rent, subletting is set to grow more popular. Let's discuss now the pros, cons and hidden costs of subletting and how you can bring it about. We're joined via Skype by Justin Thom from Galetti Corporate Real Estate. Justin, very good morning to you. Firstly, just above everything else, how bad is office occupancy at the moment? I saw a statement that you wrote, and you say it's 50%. But is it possible that some of it is less than 50%?
Good morning to you and all your viewers. Yes, definitely. It's definitely probably less than 50% at the moment. But we don't only speak about office occupancy at the moment. Remember, there's also a large warehousing and logistics sector in our economy as well.
Yeah, now, I mean, office space specifically needs to find, I guess, as you argue, innovative ways of making sure that that space is used properly.
Yes. Well, let's look at an overall picture at the moment. You know, unfortunately, we have just taken part in the largest work-from-home experiments that's ever taken place, and occupiers have been trying to do this for years. There was also a global workforce study that says 4 of every 5 employees would love to work from home at least once a week. So just factoring in that, without COVID, we're looking at a 20% reduction. And as I said earlier, there's at least a 50% reduction at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, if you hear the scientists and where we are at globally and locally in terms of the pandemic, it's going to take years for office space to really recover to the capacity we used to see just 5-6 months ago.
Yeah, very correct in saying that. We see in our own predictions about a 3 to 5 year wait until we get to pre-COVID levels of office occupancy in South Africa.
So now, what should you be aware of if you're a tenant of an office space and you're no longer occupying 30% of it, or you're occupying less than 50% of it? What can you do?
Look, I think on previous interviews we've done, it was relocating, restacking, re-gearing your leases, looking at payment deferments and rental holidays. But obviously, subletting is a huge factor in here. If you're looking at decreasing your office space by, let's say, 30%, it doesn't make sense to move, right? If you move to another space, there's a huge capital expenditure that you need to outlay, whereas another tenant might be looking to come and take over some of that space that you used to occupy, but as a plug-and-play option. Therefore, they don't have that capital expenditure up front and can kind of just keep on working from day one.
But now, if the building is not yours and you're occupying it, you're a tenant, you're renting, and you're seeing that you could do subletting, how should you go about it? What must you be aware of? Of course, I guess the landlord needs to come into play here.
Yes, of course. Look, you generally have to get permission from the landlord. You have to also make sure that you're pretty much using the offices for the same use as the current tenant is using it for. And you also remember you can't lease out your office space longer than what your expiry date is. So if you've got 1 year left on your lease, you can't go and sign a sublease in place with 2 years left. The landlord would probably look for a new lease then with a new tenant entering the space. Yeah,
so your subletting contract has to be pretty much under the main contract you have as a tenant.
Exactly. And I would employ any tenants that are looking at subleasing some of their space to obviously look at their contracts and look at some of the pros and cons in it, especially are you covered in any damages? You might have to take additional insurance out, or at least make sure that the current tenant that's going into place is going to abide by the same laws of your current lease contract.
Yeah, so they can't come in and you are using it for one purpose and then they use it for something else.
Generally speaking, no, they can't.
Yeah, and then you have to make sure you cover yourself for damages. Sorry, Justin, you're saying?
Yeah, but generally speaking, if you're using it for offices, and we are speaking about commercial office space at the moment, generally administrative purposes are all in the same use. If someone had to come and, say, for instance, use it as a place of instruction, as an educational facility, then you would have to look at the uses.
Yeah, so you have to make sure that your agreement is very clear, the subletting contract rather, your landlord is on board, and you cover yourself for things like damages, for example.
Of course. I mean, that's one of the service lines we do as well. We we would advise the occupiers in that.
Yeah, now finally, before I let you go, Justin, where is South Africa when you look at the international front? Because I guess in other places in the world, like Europe, which were hit very hard, and Asia and North America before us, office space there would have been badly affected up to today. Where are we compared to the rest of the world?
Look, I think we're pretty much tracking on target with the rest of the world. Europe, obviously, we've seen them opening up their service lines a bit, but obviously they're keeping up their social distancing. So although they're reducing an office size, you're still seeing the employees sitting further apart. So they're not giving up too much office space as per se. But if you look at somewhere like Boston, for instance, you could not get office space there, and now I think it's down to about 40% of the office space is currently up for sublet.
Yeah, and subletting-wise in South Africa, very briefly, are people taking up this new way, tenants who are in these big office spaces that they no longer use fully?
Look, I think it's seen in twofold. One on the e-commerce side and the FMCG, we've seen those guys actually needing to increase the capacity of their current facilities. Now, instead of taking up new space, they look at a warehouse that currently isn't being occupied, and they'll take that on a short-term sublease. But on the office space, an interesting one that we have advised to recently is that one of the big occupiers based in central Johannesburg has taken up 4 different locations across Johannesburg, as they don't want their employees in the same situation, in the same locations, just to not having all the eggs in one basket.
Okay, thank you very much, Justin, Thom. They're very interesting developments, of course, in the office space market. We see more and more office space being available, less than 50% currently occupancy in the main centres in South Africa. And he's suggesting that one of the innovative ways you could do, if you're a tenant in there, talk to the landlord and see if you could sublet some of that space. Somebody might be needing it for the same purpose.